Welcome back to Tech, Tesla, and Trends. Tonight, I'm returning to multidimensional processes and chess. Uh, this is what I'd call Module 2, Decisions Matter. And this is looking at the goals as you are moving forward and you encounter a problem. How would Elon proceed? And in this case, several interviews have revealed entertaining stories. Most recently, the interview with Ron Barron discussing the Delbert factor within companies. Look at that as just comical. Anyways, the first aspect, though, is determining you have a problem. And once you've determined there's a problem with either your production or the requirements that exist for whatever your goal might be, that's the first thing you have to do is make sure you actually understand what the problem is. So then the next step is ask questions of all involved. And this is really one of the most elementary processes in this, but it is necessary. Don't make assumptions, because assumptions lead you down blind alleys and usually make a fool of you. And it's one of those things that I love the brutal honesty that Elon had in that exchange with Ron Barron, explaining that he tried to make the problem go faster instead of determining that the problem didn't even need to be part of the Model 3. So it comes down to ask the questions, determine what is really necessary. And that gets to the heart of the next step. Determine if the problem requires a solution, or can it be ignored? If it can be ignored, ignore it. If it can't, can it be removed? And that's a valid question, because remember, no part is the best part. No process is the best process. Such an elementary logic that I heard Elon say, and it resonates in just about everything I've begun looking at. If you can find a way to remove steps from your process, it speeds it up. And that is at the core of everything I've observed in this particular model, is that the decisions matter. You have to make quick decisions and determine what's required and what's not required, and figure out ways to make things disappear. And that leads to the next portion of that first part, which is, if it's a problem, make a decision on what you're going to do with what you know now. Don't wait another 10 or 15 months like a lot of the other automotive companies will do. They'll kick out a small little tweak. They'll change the color, or they'll add a little knob, change the knob on the knobs for the radio or whatever else. That's not a decision. That's a small tweak, and that doesn't improve the overall functionality of problems that may exist. And that's at the core also of recognizing a problem exists and not just trying to put a Band-Aid over it and ignore it. If you can ignore it, by all means, it works. It may not actually be a problem. But if you need to deal with a problem, deal with the problem. Know all the specifics and work your way through it, one step at a time, one moment, one action, and do so with grace and dignity. There's nothing wrong with having dignity in the process. So that leads us to step 2, which is rapid action, and rapid action now. then and that is broken down into that first step, which is to test the solution. Does the solution you came up with in the first part make sense? If it does it work? If it doesn't, iterate as required. Rapid iteration matters. It makes for a better process in the end. It's okay to fail. Fail often and fail forward. That's not always a time-tested, accepted answer in corporate America, but it is one that Elon has embraced. And it's something that you can see in every single company that he operates in, because they're willing to make mistakes and rapidly change. And that willingness to be human, to make mistakes and to change and to improve is really what defines that startup mentality that is present within Tesla and within all of the other Elon companies. And the final part of that is never give up. It's the Churchill principle. If you quit, it's over. And if Elon's anything, he's not a quitter. He'll never give up when he's got a problem before him. He keeps going, and he pushes through whatever horror and hell he is willing to put himself through. And that was illustrated time and time again in the early days of Tesla. And I think it's illustrated in the willingness to brave the slings and arrows of Twitter, most definitely. So the third part in this whole decisions matter process is to moving from you've tested your solution to moving that solution into production. Because after all, prototypes are easy. Production is hard. Another simple wisdom that is completely missed in a lot of modern manufacturing companies, especially some of the post-SPAC EV companies. Enough said on that. We're watching the circus. But in step 3, you move that from the solution into production once it's verified. And the most important part, repeat step 2. Rapid action now, test the solution, iterate as required, and never give up once that production is verified. And then you have to verify that production process is viable at speed. And if it's not, repeat. Or if you run into trouble, repeat step 2. Iterate as necessary and work your way through. And if it turns out that things aren't working out quite the way you needed, and your time, as you revisit the timeline and the resources that you have for the solution, you have to then hit step 4, which is revisiting those requirements. Determine if the solution meets the requirements of your timeline. It's a plain and simple thing. Is that going to meet the goals? If it's not, you're going to have to revisit step 2. You might notice a theme here. Step 2, rapid action now, testing the solution, iterating as required, and never give up are right there at this repeated process. So if that timeline meets your requirements, and can it be further sped up? Again, never stop asking the questions. Never stop iterating and improving. And if the answer to that is yes, then how? And iterate until you get to that next level. If the answer is no, that you can't, perhaps it isn't a long-term solution. It may meet the low volume world, but it might not make the high volume world. And again, iterate. That's step 2. Act now and iterate, and continue on until you succeed. So that takes us through step 4. And the 5th and final step, I know this one will completely shock all of you. Always remember step 2. It's a principled method, and apply principled reasoning to that. So give it a thought. Are there things in module 2 there, the decisions matter, that you see particular wisdom in? Are there things you think don't make sense in this process? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. Add them in down below, and we'll carry the conversation on there. Or you can find me on Twitter, and we can have the conversation there as well. For now, have a great night. We'll talk to you later.